countries that moved quickly and basically are now almost virus-free or very, very low, have it entirely contained. The extreme case being New Zealand. What that means is that you start getting an economic recovery right away. But an important point is that it does not recover back to its original level until you get a vaccine. Basically, this takes the point of the economist, which said, look, we're in a 90% economy. 10% is already getting wiped out. So until we can rebuild that, and you can't really rebuild it until you get a vaccine, we're not going to see that. So in the first scenario, essentially, in those countries that have moved quickly, they're beginning the economic recovery. They're probably likely to have some small ripples of infection over the next few months. They'll be recovering well into the third and fourth quarter of this year and be in we might call the next normal by the first quarter of 2021. And of course, this scenario assumes that the social compact works reasonably well. That is, people behave appropriately, they are highly disciplined, etc., in what they do. And they've done that pretty much in the countries where this is true. And it's not an accident that a lot of these are in Asia, somewhat more disciplined, and also societies that in often cases were wearing masks already. You think about Japan, they don't shake hands, they bow. They actually do keep social distancing as a norm. And if you walk down the streets in Tokyo or Osaka before the pandemic, you saw lots of people with masks. So not surprisingly, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, places like that have actually done much better than almost any Western nation. Second scenario, we're calling rolling recession. And basically, this is one where you get essentially another wave, not at the same size, it's lower, but nevertheless continues on through the rest of this year. And we don't get a vaccine until sometime the middle of next year, right? Which is sort of what people think is reasonably the earliest. And when we say a vaccine, it's not only the discovery, you have to roll it out. You have about 7 billion doses to give. It will take a bit of time. So even once we discover a vaccine, it will be a while before you actually have literally enough people vaccinated. And that number is probably somewhere like 50 to 60% of any given society that needs to get vaccinated to basically kill the disease. So it's a huge number. This is probably many countries. This is many in Europe. This is parts of the United States. This could be even California or the states that have done reasonably well. But basically saying, look, right now, everybody's beginning to come out, right? We're seeing lots of people coming out. We're seeing these huge demonstrations around the world. This is the ideal spreading environment. So what we're getting are these pulses from these big events. And of course, the demonstrations are the biggest. So what's now likely to happen in the second scenario is a new lockdown. Probably call it in the fall. We're in a world now where we have 4 cascading crises interacting. We have started out with the health crisis. We had an economic crisis. Oh, by the way, we had somewhat of an economic crisis going in, a trade war that has now been amplified. We have a social crisis now created by the Black Lives Movement worldwide and the response to the George Floyd killing. And then finally, we have a leadership crisis in some countries. So this is the scenario where essentially the virus really persists, where you get major waves and it doesn't go away anytime soon. It stretches on into the next year and the year after. There was a very well circulated article called The Hammer and the Dance by Thomas Puyo, and he talked about the extended period of the virus surviving as the dance, where we're going to have to kind of constantly come back in and out and deal with it. And this is also the scenario where if we don't get a vaccine anytime soon, which is possible. We don't have vaccines for a lot of these viruses. So it's entirely plausible we won't for this either. And that means, in turn, that we're not going to get back to 100% of where we were before for years. It's like 1929, 1937, that sort of time frame, right? We're in the Great Depression. And so we're below the economic potential for quite a long time. Maybe someday we'll get a vaccine, but you kind of learn to live in a pandemic world. And that is a plausible scenario of depressed economic activity and kind of a persistent pandemic where COVID is the new normal. The scale of change is going to be big no matter what. The disruption that we've already had will lead to big change. The persistent disruption will lead, how we work, how we, look, at Salesforce, probably over half our employees will never go back to the office. They've discovered they like it at home. They'd rather not have to spend 2 hours a day commuting to and from work. They'd rather get that extra day a week at home with their families or being productive or time off. The truth is we're using crude technology that already is going to be superseded. We're on a Zoom call here. The quality of the remote engagement tools are going to explode right now for education, for work, for healthcare, for social.